Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to our show. This is Sarah, and I'm here with Peter, and we are going to be talking about A Course in Miracles, specifically, what is the Christ, which is a part of the workbook. We're a couple of students of the course who meet in person every week in Whitby, Ontario, and we have a great time talking, and this discussion just carries on our learning, and we just quite enjoy it. So today we're going to be talking about what is the Christ, and it's really interesting because, the Christ is within each one of us, and I think that is the biggest revelation that can come to somebody at a certain point. I remember for myself, I had a moment where I was driving a bus, because I drove a city bus in Toronto, and I was just feeling really wonderful that day and just being very kind and very loving, very compassionate towards my passengers. I was trying to drive the bus really smoothly to give everyone a wonderful ride. And a gentleman got off at one point, and he was an older man. And when he got off, he went down the stairs, and when he got to the sidewalk, he turned and he bowed to me, and he put his hands together in the prayer position. And he said, "God bless you." And it was a moment where I think every other time in my life, I had always thought of God as something that was in the sky that was giving me a blessing. And in that moment, I thought so differently, because I realized that he could be saying God, as in namaste, as in I'm recognizing the wonderfulness in you, the kindness in you, the compassion in you, and you are blessing yourself, and you're blessing yourself by being this kind and compassionate person. So it was almost as though, it was one of those, as Oprah would call it, aha moments. And I literally thought, so God is in me. And there's a lot of spiritual seekers that I've met now. And I do have to say, we have a wonderful, wonderful group of positive vibration, high vibrating people who are becoming aware of the ego and choosing to rise above it and to be more of an observer and live in the now. There's a huge group of us here in Durham region in Ontario, which is just fantastic because, it just expands all of us. And it's amazing because when I meet some of these new people, they've done their spirituality and their training on their own, and they'll come to me, and one of the first things they'll say is, "Did you know that you're God?" And it's almost like when you first come to the realization, it can be so profound, but then being able to share that with somebody else, because there's, people are going to have their preconceived ideas and some people would be open to it and some people wouldn't. So I love it when I'm like, I know. So I get to respond to them in a way that lets them know that, I totally get it. And I'm glad that you get it too. So, Peter, do you want to chime in? Has this rung any bells for you of something to share with our listeners and me?
Yeah, it's a little different not having three of us here with Matthew not being here. But I've just got the Course in Miracles section open here, which asks, what is the Christ? And I think maybe we could begin by just to acquaint our readers with what the Course in Miracles says. So if you're okay with that, I'll just read it here, and we'll take it from there.
That sounds fantastic.
Christ is God's Son as He created Him or her. He is the self we share, uniting us with one another and with God as well. He is the thought which still abides within the mind that is His source. He has not left His holy home, nor lost the innocence in which He was created. He abides unchanged forever in the mind of God. And it goes on to say, Christ is the link that keeps you one with God and guarantees that sin is no more than an illusion of despair, for hope forever will abide in Him. Your mind is part of His and His of yours. He is the part in which God's answer lies, where all decisions are already made and dreams are over. He remains untouched by anything the body's eyes perceive, for though in him his Father placed the means for your salvation, yet does he remain the self who, like his Father, knows no sin. Home of the Holy Spirit and at home in God alone, does Christ remain at peace within the heaven of your holy mind. This is the only part of you that has reality in truth. The rest is dreams. Yet will these dreams be given unto Christ to fade before his glory and reveal your holy self, the Christ, to you at last. And it ends up with two more paragraphs. The Holy Spirit reaches from the Christ in you to all your dreams and bids them come to him to be translated into truth. He will exchange them for the final dream which God appointed at the end of dreams. For when forgiveness rests upon the world and peace has come to every son of God, what could there be keep things separate for what remains to see except Christ's face? And finally, and how long will this holy face be seen? For when it is but the symbol that the time for learning now is over and the goal of atonement has been reached at last, so therefore let us seek to find Christ's face and look on nothing else. As we behold his glory, will we know we have no need of learning or perception or of time or anything except the holy self, the Christ whom God created as his Son. And I'd like to, contrast that with, of course, the popular idea in Christianity that there is but one Christ and that he is the only true begotten Son of God. Whereas in the Course of Miracles, there is that expansion, you could almost say, in that the Course in Miracles maintains that we are all equal children of God. The difference between ourselves and perhaps Christ is that his awareness was beyond what ours is at this time. And so the Course in Miracles points a direction, at least for us, who perhaps aren't as long along the road, to see the truth that indeed in all of us Christ abides. And as that becomes our daily intention to see that, because the truth is, I think for most of us, we don't have that vision yet. However, the decision and the intention to be shown Christ's face, I think, is a prerequisite to us actually seeing it. So desire to see the God in everyone is something that, unless we're open to it, willing to see it, and intentional and desirous of seeing it, I believe that's one of the things that will give us a different vision. So, as in your life, Sarah, where we have these fleeting moments where we seem to see beyond the veil, I think we are coming into a time when what our vision shows us becomes happier and happier. And although we may not, take a giant step all the time, I think daily we can begin to see all situations in life more and more through the lens of happiness and holiness. And so for me, that's basically what this is all about, moving in the direction of seeing only the best in life and the best in each other.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you for reading through that. You did really, really well. I always love listening to A Course in Miracles when it's out loud, because a lot of times when I'm reading it, it's like just in my head. So it's nice to hear it and read along with it. But, I really appreciate you bringing the contrast, because I kind of quit Sunday school back when I was 7, got upset with my Sunday school teacher for scolding me for something that somebody else did. So I went home and told my mom that I quit Sunday school, and to my surprise, she said, okay. And, so besides going church, a few times here and there, I went with my grandmother for a couple of years before she passed away. It was very important to her. So I would go and take her from the nursing home, drive her over, and it was quite an ordeal, because she was quite elderly and slow and hard of hearing, but she just really liked going. So, but I really appreciate you bringing the contrast how Christianity says there's only one begotten Son of God, and how the Course of Miracles makes it more inclusive. So, but for me personally, thinking the way the Course in Miracles does, that we are all God and we all have the divine in us. I think at the time when we're looking to see Christ in everyone's face, so basically we're looking upon the face, that's all we're looking upon is the face of Christ. So it doesn't matter who we're looking at that person with the utmost of compassion and intention and integrity and love and joyfulness and acceptance. It's so much easier to do if you're thinking that we're all one and, we're all just as glorious as the other. And myself personally, I've really been focusing on living with love for the past year, and it's just really heightened in the past couple of weeks. I've been having some huge synchronicity events, like just mind-boggling. They say you can manifest your thoughts within a couple of days, and that's pretty good. And I'm manifesting things in like less than 30 seconds. So living with integrity and living positive me feels really super duper important, and I'm really grateful for it. And then I look at lesson 271, which is on the next page, after what is the Christ. And I just like to read it because it's just so beautiful. It's not too long. Christ is the vision I will use today. Each day, each hour, every instant, I am choosing what I want to look upon, the sounds I want to hear, the witnesses to what I want to be the truth for me. Today, I choose to look upon what Christ would have me see, to listen to God's voice, the witnesses, to what is true in God's creation. In Christ's sight, the world and God's creation meet, and as they come together, all perception disappears. His kindly sight redeems the world from death, for nothing that he looks on His kindly sight redeems the world from death, for nothing that he looks on but must live, remembering the Father and the Son, Creator and creation unified. And just that last little bit there gives me goosebumps. And then the little prayer in the Course in Miracles book, anytime there's italicized writing, it's a prayer. So the prayer here is, Father, Christ's vision is the way to you. What he beholds invites your memory to be restored to me. And this I choose to be what I look upon today. And that just, I just really, really, really appreciate these words. I'm sure that has probably triggered some kind of insight for you, Peter.
I sometimes, at least I think in my journey and a lot of other people's journey, a lot of what it's about is finally or increasingly recognizing that all we ever really want, more and more consistently, is to see in a way in which our perception is one in which we feel safe, which we feel complete, and one in which, by the way we see, blesses another person. And I think the eyes of love show us the things that not only gladden our heart, but they also do more for the other person than anything else that we could give them in a physical sense. To know the beauty and the magnificence in another, and to wordlessly at times communicate that to them, that they're simply wonderful, wondrous beyond thought, is the greatest gift that I think any one of us can receive. And the truth is that it's only when we are willing to see that more and more in others that we begin to believe it as being the truth of ourselves. In other words, the more we give away, or in a sense, the more we look for that in others, the more we bless ourselves and recognize ourselves as being the same as our brother, a holy child of God. And so as we transition more and more in that direction, I think it becomes more and more easy to let go of anything that is love, any resentments, any thoughts of revenge, any thoughts of past hurts, any fears about the future. We begin to let that go because it no longer holds the same value for us, or we no longer feel as justified in holding any of these kind of less than loving perceptions. And as I recognize more and more that is all I want, I also recognize more and more that it's not something I can do on my own, and that as I'm willing to surrender to God and empty myself of my opinions, of my judgments, of my past hurts and whatnot, as I'm willing to let all that go and simply go to God to give to me only what He can give, is something that not only takes the burden off my shoulders, thinking that I've somehow got to do this, and it makes life so much easier to recognize that God is always there to bless us if we simply go to Him, rather than either trying to do it on our own or struggling with it. So this whole thing about surrender becomes more and more a wonderful way of being. And it just lifts the burden of life so much more than any struggles that we might think are worth struggling.
Yeah, you know what? As I'm listening to you, there's just one thing that I don't know, and I'd love to, say my thought and ask you what you like. If we're saying that the divine is within us, because we are God, and you're like, I'm God, you're God. We all have that divine spark in us. But then when you said giving it to Him, so if you could give me some kind of, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, and if we're giving it to God, but God is in us, so does that mean when we go to meditate, we're able to do the connection? Could you shed some light on that?
I've begun to see, or at least my understanding of prayer, for instance, has changed in the last little while. I often thought of prayer as something that unless I ask God for something, He's not going to be giving it to me, or that I need to ask first of all for something before I receive it. And yet now I'm beginning to see that prayer is more something that I do, not for the sake of pleading or appealing to God, but it's something that I do that at the same time opens me up to a greater degree to receive the gifts that are always there. So if we remind ourselves, for instance, that I'm a holy child of God, what we're really doing, in a sense, is opening up to that very perception. It's still not a perception that we, in a sense, can manufacture on our own through our words, but the words themselves are almost symbolic of the fact that this is how I want to see. This is my decision. This is my choice of how I want to experience my life. And in that verbalization, what we are really acknowledging is that deep down, this is what we desire. And, one of the characteristics of God is that He never, in a sense, will push anything or force anything on us, and that it's only our willingness to receive and our being open to receive that opens up the kingdom of heaven to us. It literally is all there waiting for us, but how open to it are we? And so reading spiritual texts, reading anything that uplifts us and causes us to feel more free and more happy is simply another way of being in that state where we attune to God's presence more, where we feel it in our hearts that He's closer to us, so that and I guess when you asked about meditation, for me, meditation, in a sense, is simply becoming quiet, again with the intention of God and of being as open as possible, so that I may recognize God's presence to a greater degree. And for me, the difference with meditation is that I do even less. It's not so much that I'm reading, it's not so much that I'm talking to myself, it's simply that I go into meditation with the desire that I'm going to be as quiet as possible, I'm going to be as open as possible, and whatever is best for me to receive at this time, I'm open to it. And so oftentimes things will come up that I haven't even been aware of. Certain convictions might be strengthened. Certain understandings may be deepened. So for me to go into meditation, it's more in the sense of I don't know I'm ready yet for, or I don't know what's most helpful for me at this time. And I basically allow myself to be as open as possible, and God knows best. So I don't know if that answers really what you asked.
Oh, you know what? It all sheds light on it. Because for me, when I think of, God is within me, and when I think of prayer, unless I'm setting, a decree on something I'm wanting to create in my life, a new intention, whatever it is, creation, manifestation, then I'll start focusing on things. And I've recently got into some new, a new author to me, and I thought there was some wonderful things, like if there's something that you are really intending to bring into your life, if you repeat it with earnest and, with full intention and a lot of emotion, 15 times apparently is some magic number for things. So I thought that was kind of cool. So for me, that is when I'm decreeing something I'm wanting to bring into my life. And like I said, things are happening for me in my life right now very quickly. So this is something that I'm, quite excited to play around with. And I will absolutely report, back to this, to my friends and to this show, some of the things that are going to, that are in the works right now. But for me, when I think of prayer, I don't think of it as a moment where I have to stop and get down on my knees and pray, because I feel that I've changed my thoughts to be positive and loving and compassionate and kind as much as I possibly humanly can, and still have an ego there. To me, my prayer is continual. Like, I feel that God is within me. God always listens, which means that every thought I have and all this self-talk that's going on, it's all a prayer. So, so that's my understanding of it. But what I think is interesting is when we're thinking about, Christ's vision, if you can be kind and caring and compassionate and earnest and giving and, loving and doing all these things, so then Christ's vision, and now imagine you add to that looking at every single person you see as having the face of Christ. So, not only are you filled with all this wonderful love emotion going through you, but you're also looking at these people where before you might have had judgments about them, or you might have had some kind of negative self-talk happen when you looked at them, and now you're looking at them and thinking, wow, you're beautiful, you're an expression of Christ, and you're another expression of Christ, and so are you. And it just becomes such a more loving and peaceful world. And I look at lesson 273, and I love this first sentence, which is, perhaps we are now ready for a day of undisturbed tranquility. And the lesson is, the stillness of the peace of God is mine. So if this is not yet feasible, we are content and even more than satisfied to learn how such a day can be achieved. If we give way to a disturbance, let us learn how to dismiss it and return to peace. We need but tell our minds with certainty, the stillness of the peace of God is mine, and nothing can intrude upon the peace that God himself has given to his Son. Father, your peace is mine. What need have I to fear that anything can rob me of what you would have me keep? I cannot lose your gifts to me, and so the peace you gave your Son is with me still, in quietness and in my own eternal love for you. And that makes me think of something that we should have a radio show on another day. But how what was that last part, right? The eternal love, which is our own internal love. So our own internal love, it's always there. You might be in a bad day, you might be in an upset day, you might have had some horrible things to happen in your world. And I say seem because, we can't get stuck on the story. But, you can have all these, things happen, but love is not something you have to learn how to do, or all you have to do is just remember that it's always there with you. And I think we have about 5 minutes left, so what does that make you think, Peter?
I agree with everything you say. And I think all of us are beginning to recognize that there's something that we can still stay at least partly connected to, or within our awareness there is now this awakening part of us that we can still stay connected to, even at those times when things don't seem to be going right, and even at those times when we seem to lose it, and when we seem to get angry and frustrated or at other people, or they seem to be attacking us. I think those things seem to lose, don't seem to be quite as charged. It's harder for us to stay as annoyed or as angry for as long a time as we may have in the past. And letting go of grievances and whatnot is one of those things that I think is happening to more and more people, that it becomes easier and easier simply to let go and to recognize that it's in the letting go that we return more and more to an awareness of God's presence, because, it's impossible to hold on to hurt consciously and feel God's presence. And it comes down to a matter, well, which do you want more? To hold on to a grievance, to think that you're right, or would you like to let that opinion go in order to feel God's peace? And it's becoming easier and easier for all of us simply to choose peace as being the most important value in our life, and to value that beyond anything else. And as we do that more and more consistently, even in the times of the challenges, we grow in our ability to stay awake. And the miracles as they happen are not at our control, beyond our willingness to be open to them. And when they appear, it's fantastic, and sometimes everything will seem to fall in place, and sometimes it won't, but at least we move in the direction of trust and hope for life, rather than what also seems to be the case nowadays, where a lot of people are losing hope and losing faith and being discouraged by what's happening in the world and whatnot. It's helpful to remember that if we choose, we can still somehow get the feeling that this too shall pass. The images worn, the images of all the other things that are visible in the world. If we can hold on to the vision that we would like to see, rather than being succumbed by the things that seem to appear in front of us, then at least I think we do our part in keeping that love vibration going and keeping that intention of what we desire, rather than fighting what we don't like.
So we're down to 60 seconds. You know what? I couldn't have said anything better myself. I think the beautiful thing the biggest message I got from the last things that you're saying is looking through the eyes of love, and this too shall pass. I think when you're able to say, when something is like just horrible landed on your doorstep, that you're just like, oh, why this? If you can remember, this too shall pass. This too shall pass, right? It's such a helpful thing, and I thank you for bringing that up, because I never would have thought of that in this moment, but I think it's just perfect. So, Peter, we did it without Matthew. How about that?
There you go. Yeah. I think just the one last thing that occurs. The one last thing is to maybe perhaps remember that in every circumstance of life, God is always there. So in one sense, it's already past, and the eternal is always with us. So rather turn to that which can't be destroyed, and then the passing things of life simply pass away.
Yes, that's perfect. And I think we've just gone out of time here. So thank you so much for joining me, Peter. And
my pleasure, Sarah. Thank you also. Till next week.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.